Okay, so we have completed the discussion on the structure, overview structure of the female reproductive system. Okay, from the diagram also, have you understood everything properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Now let us take a look inside the ovary. Okay, inside one ovary we will see whatever is the structure for one ovary is the same for the other ovary also. Okay, this is very important part, because based on this you will understand the menstrual cycle also clearly. Okay, now see, here inside the ovary the process is slightly different. Okay, the important point is you have to remember, now when you will learn about hormones. Okay, there is a very important hormone which is released from the pituitary gland in our brain, which is known as the FSH. Okay, from the pituitary gland of our brain there is a hormone which is released, which is called the FSH, which is called follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, this FSH is common for males and females from the pituitary, but in the males the FSH stimulates the testes, and in the females the FSH stimulates the ovaries. The reason is the same, both of them the formation of the gametes. So inside the ovary you can see a word over here called follicles, right? It's like ovaries normally slightly oval in shape. Okay, on one side it is attached to the uterus. This is the side. So here when it is attached to the uterus you can see something blue and red over here. They are the blood vessels which supply blood to the ovary and which also take up the deoxygenated blood back from the ovary. Okay, because ovary is also containing living cells, it requires blood containing oxygen. So that is supplied by the blue part, that is the arteries, and the red ones are the veins which take up the deoxygenated blood and collect it from the ovary. That is common for every organ in our body. Okay, so other than that, from here if you start on the, if this is the ovary suppose, okay, so on the lining of the ovary there are these small cells which are present. On the lining of the ovary there are these small cells which are present, which is called the germinal epithelium. ये जो cells होते हैं lining में, that is called as the germinal epithelium. Now with FSH hormone which I said, this hormone stimulates this germinal epithelium. Okay, and when the FSH is stimulating this germinal epithelium, these follicles are developed. The first follicles which are formed, उसको बोलते हैं primordial follicles. Okay, germinal epithelium के cells थोड़े से अंदर आ जाएंगे here and they will convert into primordial follicles under the influence of FSH released by the pituitary gland located in our brain. Okay, so primordial follicles बन गए. You can see the structure also. These primordial follicles, as and when they develop, okay, follicle का मतलब क्या है? It's like one main cell surrounded by small cells. Such a group of cell is called as a follicle. It's not just one cell. The primordial follicle is a small one containing other cells surrounding it. So later on, slowly, primordial follicles will develop further and you will get primary follicles. Okay, primary follicles are slightly bigger. You can see the difference between primordial and primary. Okay, again, primary follicles will develop further. It will turn into secondary follicle. So pehla primordial, second primary, third is secondary. And as and when the development is taking place, you can see the change in the structure of the follicles, right? To see the secondary follicle. उसमें कैसा हो गया, सेकेंडरी फॉलिकल में देयर इज अ लार्जर वन and there is one main cell inside, and along with that you can see there is a slight gap which is produced. ऐसा gap जैसा दिख रहा है बीच में, right? And besides this gap the rest of the area is filled up with other small cells. ऐसा उसका structure बन गया. That's the secondary follicle. This secondary follicle turns into a final stage follicle which is known as Graafian follicle. The word is not written over here. It is called Graafian follicle. Graafian. That's the final stage follicle called Graafian follicle. This one. Okay. So Graafian follicle, how it appears now? You can see it's the largest of all the follicles. Develop hote gaya. Okay. Inside that you can see this C-shaped thing. That's nothing but a blank space, a hollow space, which is filled with a fluid. Okay. And ये जो बीच में एक cell दिख रहा है, this one. That cell in between is known as the oocyte. Okay. And that oocyte is the actual female gamete. हम लोग normally ovum करके बोलते हैं या egg cell बोलते हैं, but it is technically the oocyte, which is the female gamete. That is present in this Graafian follicle. And then it is surrounded by many other small cells. ये जो बाकी pink में दिख रहे हैं, they are the other cells. Okay, उसको cumulus oophorus करके बोलते हैं. You don't need to learn those huge words. Okay, but they are the other remaining cells. तो ये जो पूरा follicle बन गया, that's called as the Graafian follicle. Till here it is understood.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so considering day 1 where the FSH was released, germinal epithelium was stimulated, primordial follicles were formed, slowly converted from primordial to primary to secondary to Graafian follicle. So full stage Graafian follicle is now ready. So primordial से लेकर Graafian follicle तक in a female it takes approximately 14 days, 1/4. Okay, primordial follicle to Graafian follicle formation takes about 14 days in a female. Okay, that means day 1 में अगर FSH का stimulation आया तो 14th day में Graafian follicle is ready. And that Graafian follicle contains this oocyte, which is the female gamete. So once the Graafian follicle is ready, now there will be another hormone from the pituitary gland, which is known as the LH. There is another hormone from the pituitary gland, which is called the LH, also called as the luteinizing hormone. Okay. As soon as the LH is released from the pituitary, this Graafian follicle will burst. The Graafian follicle will burst, it will rupture, and you can see some part of the Graafian follicle remains inside, but the ovum, the secondary oocyte, is thrown outside. Secondary oocyte जो ovum है उसको बाहर फेंक देते हैं. And along with the ovum, there are few cells which are surrounding the ovum that are also released. उसको बोलते हैं corona radiata. Okay, the word corona literally means a crown. Nowadays we are aware about some other corona, right? वो virus का नाम है, but वहाँ पे इसका कुछ मतलब नहीं है. This is the crown of cells surrounding the ovum, and this process which takes place कि under the influence of the LH, the Graafian follicle ruptures, okay, and the oocyte is released. उसको बोलते हैं ovulation. That process is called ovulation. Okay, and this ovum that is given out, this one is thrown out of the ovary and the fimbriae of the fallopian tube will catch it. You have seen that the ovary is surrounded by the fimbriae of the fallopian tube. So जैसे ही ovum से release हुआ, fimbriae ने पकड़ लिया. Okay, so this ovum goes into the fallopian tube. For now, we will call it ovum, but it is actually not the ovum. Okay, and the remaining portion of the Graafian follicle that is present inside the ovary, that slightly develops and turns into something called corpus luteum. Corpus का मतलब है body, luteum मतलब yellow. So it's simply like a small yellowish body. Okay, and this corpus luteum is the one which produces the hormone called as progesterone. प्रोजेस्टेरॉन जो हार्मोन है उसको बोलते हैं प्रेगनेंसी हार्मोन. Okay, it produces a hormone called progesterone, which is the pregnancy hormone. That means the corpus luteum will remain inside the ovary for a few days. It will secrete the progesterone because the female gamete is ready, in anticipation that the sperm might come, fuse with the ovum, zygote will be produced, and corpus luteum will maintain the pregnancy. But of course, pregnancy does not happen every month. So corpus luteum will remain for some days. At the end, when the corpus luteum lifespan is over, when there is no sperm, no possibility of sexual intercourse, that time the corpus luteum will degenerate. And it will turn into a whitish colored body called as corpus albicans. And it will eventually degenerate. Okay, so this ovulation, which I said, release of the ovum from the ovary, from here to the degeneration of corpus luteum takes another 14 days. So ideally, at the end of this 14th day, that is totally 28 days, this one cycle gets completed. And next day, there is another stimulation from the FSH. And the same cycle will again continue. Is that clear? Properly?
Yes.
So it's like, as you have seen, 28 days ka ek cycle hai proper. It's not exactly a month. It is 28 days. So in those 28 days, there is one female gamete which is produced. Okay, that is the ideal condition. Okay, some fluctuations can be there here and there. It depends from one female to another, and there are a lot of factors associated with it. Okay, this is the Graafian follicle I was telling. Okay, the structure looks like this. So it's like there is an outer thick covering. Okay, inside that, these green colored ones are the cells. And you can see the hollow space, that is a fluid called the follicular fluid. There are blood capillaries surrounding it. And the main thing is the oocyte. That oocyte is the female gamete. It is called as the secondary oocyte. Okay, there is a difference between secondary oocyte and the ovum. Secondary oocyte is the initial stage. वो वैसे ही रहता है. Only when there is a presence of a sperm, and the sperm will come and fuse with the oocyte, then one more division will take place. That time it gets converted into ovum. That's the difference. So the actual female gamete is secondary oocyte. Okay, this is the structure. See this. ये oocyte, female gamete. You can see lot of sperms surrounding it. ठीक है ना? तो oocyte का कैसा है कि सबसे पहले there is a large number of cells which are surrounding the oocyte. Small cells having their own nucleus, you can see. They are called as the corona radiata. Okay. Inner to that, you can see this white colored thick portion. There is a thick wall that surrounds the oocyte. उसको बोलते हैं zona pellucida. Okay. And inner to that, there is a thin plasma membrane surrounding the oocyte. Okay, which is called as the vitelline membrane. And उसके अंदर cytoplasm, Because it is the part of the oocyte, the cytoplasm is called the ooplasm. Okay, and there is a haploid female nucleus present inside. Usko secondary oocyte बोलते हैं. And on one side you will see a very reduced cell that's called as the first polar body. So in a secondary oocyte you will find one polar body, but when the secondary oocyte is fertilized by a sperm, तब वो बनेगा ovum, then you will see two polar bodies over here. तो secondary oocyte और ovum में ये differences है. So whatever is ovulated from the ovary, what is caught by the fimbriae, goes into the fallopian tube, and it is fertilized by the sperm. That is the secondary oocyte. Understood the structure properly?
Yes.
Okay. So based on this, let us understand something called menstrual cycle. This is very important part. Okay. See, the word over here is something called cycle. So when you say cycle, it means a cyclic process. It starts at one point, goes through a series of steps and comes back at the same point. उसको बोलते हैं cycle. Menstrual cycle is a reproductive cycle which occurs only in females. Okay, it is said to be a reproductive cycle which is only for females, and one ideal menstrual cycle occurs in 28 days. We normally call it as a monthly cycle, but it is not full 1 month, it is 28 days. Okay, so each menstrual cycle has around 4 stages, one after the other. Okay, so you have understood the structure and the functioning of the ovary. Based on that, these 4 stages you have to understand. Okay, so ye dekho, what is happening now? We'll consider from you can say day 1 to 7. Okay, you can see here 1 to 7 is the menstruation. The first stage, which is called as the menstrual or the bleeding phase. Okay, so it is like exactly, it is not the same number of days for every female. Okay, sometimes it is for 3 days, sometimes it is for 2 days, sometimes for 4 to 5 days, or maybe up to 7 days. It will differ upon a lot of factors. So here in this menstruation phase, what is happening? The word itself is telling you there is bleeding. There is a discharge or the flow of blood from the vagina. Okay, and it is not only blood. Along with blood, there are what you can say, if you remember the word endometrium, we had come, the inner wall of the uterus, that also breaks down. So the cell debris of the endometrium, the discharged blood, the mucus plug in the cervix, and the unfertilized ovum, all that is discharged in the bleeding phase. Okay, so in the first 5 to 7 days, it is the bleeding phase. So in this graph also you can see menstruation means there is a breakdown. This is the endometrium which is shown. So in the first 7 days, you can see the endometrium is reducing, breaking down. Okay, once the bleeding phase is over, the second phase is called proliferative, also called follicular phase. So here in the first phase, there is no hormonal involvement. In the second phase, as I told you, there is a hormone FSH that is involved, follicle stimulating hormone. So once the bleeding is stopped, then the role of the FSH starts. Germinal epithelium will be stimulated, follicle formation will start. So from day 7 to approximately day 14. Okay, the follicles will start primordial, primary, secondary, Graafian. So at the end of the 13th or the 14th day, the Graafian follicle is ready. That is the second phase. And simultaneously, the wall of the uterus, that is endometrium, is also getting thick again. because it's like the body is assuming that there will be fertilization, there will be zygote, so the baby can come, to endometrium has to be ready. That's why the wall becomes thick again. That is the second one, follicular phase. At the end of the follicular phase, 14th day, the Graafian follicle is fully formed. So you recollect the hormone LH, luteinizing hormone. So as soon as the LH is released, there is ovulation that takes place exactly on the day 14. Okay, so ovulation means the Graafian follicle ruptures and the secondary oocyte is thrown out of the ovary, caught by the fimbrium. That takes place on the 14th day, that is the third phase. So that's why the third ovulatory phase is the shortest phase in the entire menstrual cycle, because it is for only one day. Okay, and then for the remaining 14 days, that is day 15 or 14 to day 28, it is called as the luteal or the secretory phase, where there is production of estrogen progesterone. Because Graafian follicle is ruptured, corpus luteum is formed, progesterone hormone will be maximum in this phase. Estrogen progesterone. Okay, so till the next like 28th day something, the corpus luteum is giving the possibility that the hormone is there, the gamete is there. If the fertilization has to take place, these 14 days are the right time. Getting it? Okay, and at the end of the 28th day, if there is no sperm, no fertilization, then the next menstruation will start. The uterus lining, which was formed nicely in this phase, will tear down. The ovum, which was waiting for 14 days, is released. And there is this discharge from the vagina, that is the next menstrual phase. So 3 to 7 days of menstruation, 7 to 8 days of follicle formation, 1 day of ovulation, and 14 days of secretion. That's how the menstrual cycle continues. So you have to remember in which phase of the menstrual cycle, which hormone is produced in maximum quantities. Now, normally what happens is, how you can correlate this with practical life. Many times a couple, they want to have a baby, but they are not able to have it. Okay, those who are not scientifically aware about all this. So when they approach a doctor, specifically a gynecologist or an endocrinologist, they will consult, they will study the menstrual cycle of the female. And according to that, the doctor will suggest them the respective days when there are maximum chances that the fertilization will take place. So that is nothing but the fourth phase they will suggest. Because in fourth phase, the gamete is ready. The chances of fertilization is maximum in this fourth phase. Now you understood this? Okay, and there are other practical issues, like especially the menstrual or the bleeding phase, which is normally known as the menstrual periods. Now there are a lot of other misconceptions or myths associated with the menstruation, superstitions associated with menstruation. It is known as an impure blood or something like that, right? Females are not allowed to do so many things during this phase, right? There are religious, what you can say, correlations with that, but biologists and doctors always say that this has nothing to do with it. This is just a normal physiological cycle. And sometimes it might happen that this bleeding phase and all can be quite painful. There can be something called heavy flow, okay, lot of discharge. So there can be a pain in the thighs, pain in the back, okay. So tiredness can be there. Many things can happen. There can be hormonal fluctuation, mood swings, okay. All that has to be managed, because this is something which happens every month, okay. And in this third one, that is the ovulatory phase, that exact point of time when the Graafian follicle ruptures and the ovum is released. At that point of time, in some of the females, it happens that there is a sudden sharp pain in the abdomen. Okay, which can be understood like as soon as the menstruation bleeding stops. From there, the 7th day after that, somewhere around that time, if there is a sharp pain in the abdomen, it can be understood that ovulation has taken place. It may not be detected by every female, but sometimes it can happen. That's a spasmodic pain which can take place. Okay, and the other hygienic aspects to be followed during the menstruation or bleeding phase, right? There are sanitary pads available. Okay, basic hygienic practice has to be maintained. So all that is also required. Okay, so average 28-day menstrual cycle. That means if you consider an exact 28-day cycle, so in a year there are 12 months and 28-day ka cycle. So in a year, ideally, there should be 13 menstrual cycles. Then it is said that the hormones of the female are working perfectly fine. But sometimes there can be a lot of fluctuations. Okay, this cycle can happen once in 2-3 months or maybe twice in a month or something. A lot of fluctuations can happen. So if it is happening once in a while, it can be like ignored to some extent. But if it is occurring too much, then the specialist has to be consulted. There will be hormonal tests which will be done. According to that, the respective treatment will be provided. But too much of ignorance is not good. And there are pills available to postpone or prepone this menstrual periods and all. That has to be avoided, at least in the young age. That can be problematic. Okay, so with respect to menstruation and periods, there are certain facts and myths which one should understand. Okay, it is not a bad or impure blood or something. Correct? Untouchability, avoiding any religious functions, etc. There's no biological basis because you have seen now it is just a physiological process. The only thing is that it is only for females, nothing else. Correct? And it's like at regular intervals, if the menstruation takes place, it indicates that the hormones are working well. One has to be happy that the hormones are fine. Correct? And then mood swings can be occurring during periods. Sometimes too happy, sometimes too irritated, anger, ye wo sab chalta rehta hai. But that needs to be handled well, managed well. Right? And then pain in some parts of the body can happen. So one can, if it is mild and bearable, one can ignore it. But if it is too much, then one can use a hot water bag or some painkillers, but only when consultation with a professional. Self-medication has to be avoided. There are pills available. So if a particular pill is good for one female, doesn't mean that it will work for another female. Every female is different. That has to be understood. Okay, so there are hygienic aspects to be remembered in such situations. Okay, so for postponing or preponing the periods, especially in a younger age, to be avoided. So this menstrual cycle, okay, it is something which begins at a certain age in the life, that is around 12 to 14 years of age. In the first menstrual periods that happen, then it is called menarche. Okay, and this reproductive life also ends at one age in life, then it is called menopause. That is around 45 to 55 years of age. So reproductive life of a female has got limited areas. A beginning, that is menarche, and an ending, that is menopause. So proper hygiene has to be maintained. There are sanitary pads and all which are available, which has to be used and disposed of properly. Okay, that is to be done. Avoiding any infection, because there is a high chance that infections can occur during such times. Okay, all these points are clear, everyone? Okay.
Yes.
And the last part for today, we will understand, because we have learned about the entire female reproductive system and the menstrual cycle. So there is one pair of glands also which we have to understand in detail. That is about the mammary glands or the breasts. As I said, these mammary glands or the breasts are located in some other part of the body, but they are also associated with the reproductive system. They are modified sweat glands. Okay, they are modified sweat glands of the skin. They are present in males and females both, but they are functional only in the females. Their development starts after puberty, when the mammary glands start increasing in size. And if you take a section across the mammary glands, you can find the most important point is there is lot of fatty tissue present in the mammary glands. Okay, adipose tissue. Actually speaking, there is a difference between the mammary gland and the breast. These are a pair of structures present in the chest region in the ventral side. Okay, and the entire organ is called as a breast, and internally these glands which you can see, they are the mammary glands. So mammary glands are a part of the breast. Okay, so in the entire breast portion there is this fatty tissue or the adipose tissue present, and internally there are these lobules of the mammary glands present. These mammary glands produce the milk for the young one. So how it is associated with the reproductive system, it's like when the fertilization takes place, the zygote is produced. There will be 9 months of pregnancy. At the end of the 9th month, or whatever is the total number of days, the parturition will take place, the child delivery will take place. And human beings are viviparous. Human beings don't lay eggs. They directly give birth to young ones. So the young one which is born is directly dependent upon the mother for the nutrition. The initial nutrition for the baby is directly the mother's milk. So as soon as the baby is born, there is another hormone secreted from the pituitary, two hormones in fact. One is prolactin, other one is oxytocin. These two hormones stimulate these mammary glands that the baby is there, start producing the milk, and oxytocin will help in secreting the milk. That's why milk secretion takes place only after pregnancy, after delivery. Okay, and all these mammary glands have their ducts which are accumulating at one point in the front, which is known as the nipple. So when the baby will suckle the nipple, the milk will be released. And this mother's milk is very essential for the growth of the baby because it contains all the required antibodies which will provide the baby with the best immunity. Because when the baby is born, it is the first time the baby is exposed to the environment. It is much prone to infections. The mother's milk is the one which provides the best protection. That's why many a times, due to unfortunate reasons, the mother's milk is not available to the baby. Sometimes immediately after birth, the mother may die, or due to some reason they get separated. So in such cases, the baby's development is hampered. Okay, so mammary glands are very important structures. So you can see in this diagram, these mammary glands having their ducts. Okay, they are the lobules of the mammary gland. And why it contains a lot of fatty tissue over here? Why they are soft structures, cushioning structures? Because when the baby is feeding on the mother, its head is close to the mother's chest. So it has to have that cushioning feeling. And that increases the bond between the mother and the newborn baby. So considering all this, nature has devised it like this, keeping the adipose tissue present over here. And that's why males do not have this developed mammary glands. They don't need to. They are rudimentary needs. Is that clear, everyone? Okay.
Yes.
So in the case
Yes.
of females nowadays, there are a lot of cases of breast cancers which are increasing. So cancer of the breast tissue. That is why it is advised that after a certain age in life, it is always advisable to carry out a test of the breast to be done. Mammogram karke bolte hain. So periodically testing that will detect any kind of tumor formation in the breast region. So timely action has to be taken and it can be treated. Okay, many other issues are there associated with. One can always learn the details. Okay, any doubt till here?
No.
Okay, quickly answer the questions. Chalo. First one, the primary sex organs in human males are quick.
Testis.
Testis, correct. Second one, male sex hormone is called the dash and female sex hormone is called the dash. Bolo.
And ovum.
Hormone. Male sex hormone is testosterone. Female sex hormone is estrogen. Okay, remember that. Then the longest part of the human male reproductive system is lengthwise. Which is the longest? It is the epididymis, highly coiled one. Remember?
Yes.
Okay, that is the longest one, lengthwise. Next, the dash is the common passage for passing urine as well as semen in males. What is it? Answer fast, time is getting over. It is the urethra. Okay, in the males, it is the urethra, which is the common passage. The tip of the penis is covered by a loose fold of skin called
Foreskin.
foreskin, correct. Then, the mother's womb is
Uretus.
uterus. It's the uterus, correct. Okay. A single ejaculation, there are approximately dash sperms.
200 to 400.
200 to 400 million. Remember the word million also. Okay. Next, the primary sex organs in females are
Ovary.
ovaries. That's right, correct. Next, the shortest phase of the menstrual cycle is ovulatory phase.
Ovulatory.
Correct. Good. Next, an ideal menstrual cycle takes place for dash days.
28.
28.
28. And last one, the external genitals of human females is called the
Vagina.
vulva. Okay, it is the vulva. Okay, so till here all the points are clear.
Yes.
We'll continue with
Yes.
fertilization and embryonic development from the next session onwards. Okay, and next week I
Okay.
think we can